Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this because, starting your very first reef aquarium, it's an incredibly exciting journey, but man, it can also feel pretty overwhelming. You've likely spent weeks getting the plumbing right, mixing the salt water perfectly, dialing in that heater. But right now, you're probably staring at a glass box full of bare, stark white dry rock. You hear the equipment humming, and you have this intense, eager desire to instantly transform that sterile rockscape into a vibrant, living underwater ecosystem, just like the ones you see at public aquariums. We often spend so much time obsessing over water quality and equipment, and rightfully so. But as our source material today highlights, your coral selection actually matters just as much as your filtration. We're going to explore the fascinating world of beginner-friendly corals and equip you with the exact knowledge you need to successfully bring that reef to life.
So that brings us to the ultimate question right out of the gate. What actually makes a coral beginner-friendly? Because when you're standing at the local fish store, bathed in that cool blue light, every single coral looks amazing, but they definitely don't all have the same survival skills. As a beginner, your tank is essentially going through its awkward teenage phase. It's chemically unstable, the beneficial bacteria are still settling deep into the pores of your rockwork, the biological nitrogen cycle is fluctuating, and vital chemical balances, things like alkalinity and calcium, well, they're still trying to find their baseline. It's a bumpy ride. You need organisms that can handle that turbulence while you're still learning the ropes of maintaining stability. And that perfectly leads us to our definition. Look, a beginner-friendly coral isn't magic. It's simply a coral known for its absolute hardiness. We're talking about species with relatively simple feeding needs, if they have any at all, and a really strong tolerance to the moderate swings that inevitably happen while your young system matures. The practical secret here is that they rely mostly on photosynthesis. The light is doing the heavy lifting for feeding. You don't need highly specialized, ultra-expensive lighting fixtures, and you definitely don't need a refrigerator full of complex, liquid coral foods or a grueling target feeding schedule from day one. They're resilient, they're forgiving, and they bounce back quickly from the inevitable growing pains of a new tank. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The secret to beginner corals. 2. Top starter coral picks. 3. Perfect placement and flow. 4. Essential feeding and maintenance. And 5. Beginner mistakes to avoid.
Section 1. The secret to beginner corals. Prioritizing stability.
Section 2. Top starter coral picks. Meet your roster.
Think of this next group of corals kind of like selecting your starting characters in a video game. Each of these corals brings a totally different aesthetic and a unique set of skills to your tank, and they're going to form the rock-solid foundation of your brand new reef. First up, we have Zoanthids, affectionately known in the hobby as zoas. These are often the very first recommendation for new hobbyists, and for incredibly good reason. They are generally super hardy, incredibly colorful, and best of all, they spread beautifully. They're reproduced by budding, essentially forming a bright, colorful carpet that encrusts tightly over your bare rockwork, creating a stunning visual foundation. They do wonderfully under standard reef lighting and just appreciate a nice, steady flow of water to keep them clean.
Now, to add an incredible visual dynamic to your rockwork, pulsing xenia and rock anemones are your absolute go-to. Xenia literally pulses. It rapidly opens and closes its polyps, looking almost like tiny little hands constantly grasping at the water. It is absolutely mesmerizing to watch and adds so much life to an otherwise static rock structure. Plus, it's completely photosynthetic, so it feeds off your light. But a quick pro tip, if you see your Xenia shrink up and stop pulsing, patience is key. Just maintain stable parameters and it'll usually bounce back. As for rock anemones, specifically the non-stinging varieties, they are a fantastic, safe entry point into keeping anemones. Just remember, they hate being moved around constantly. Find a spot with consistent light and flow, and let their foot attach so they can settle in permanently.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material. Green star polyps are a classic starter coral due to their tenacity. Tenacity is literally the perfect word here. Green star polyps, or GSP, is a brilliant neon green grass-like coral that establishes incredibly fast and flows beautifully in the current. But beware, this sheer tenacity means it's basically the space invader of the reef tank. It will grow over absolutely everything if you let it. The best strategy here is the island method. Imagine isolating a small rock covered in GSP entirely in the sandbed, completely away from your main rock structure. The sand acts as a natural moat because the coral can't easily grow across the loose substrate. It keeps this beautiful neon grass neatly contained.
So the crucial point is that while soft corals are fantastic, you might soon want something with a bit more structure. Enter the large polyp stony corals, or LPS, specifically frog spawn and hammer corals. These bring incredible, fleshy shapes to the tank. Instead of just a carpet, they have large, beautiful tentacles that sway gracefully in the current, almost looking like swaying palm trees or tiny neon balloons. But because they actively build a hard, stony skeleton underneath all that flesh, they do require just a bit more attention than the softies we just discussed. They love moderate to strong flow and really benefit from a consistent feeding routine to fuel that active skeletal growth.
Rounding out our starting roster, we have leathers. These are the forgiving giants of the beginner core world. They grow large, they look fantastic, and they are incredibly tolerant of the broader parameter ranges you'll see while your tank system cycles and stabilizes. But I gotta say, they're definitely known for their dramatic sulking. If the environment changes or if they're just having a growth spurt, they'll often close their polyps completely, look tight and shiny, and literally peel a waxy layer of outer skin off. It is absolutely crucial to know this happens. So many beginners panic, assume the coral is dead, and throw it in the trash. Please don't do that. It's a completely natural cleansing process. Just let them shed in peace and they'll emerge looking better than ever.
Section 3. Perfect placement and flow. The real care.
Look, even the absolute hardiest coral from our list is going to fail if you place it in a bad neighborhood inside your tank. This is where the real daily care happens. First, you have to match the coral to the lighting. Higher light corals belong near the top of the rockwork, right up close to the surface. Lower light corals need to go further down toward the sand bed. Simple enough, right? Next is flow. Flow in a reef tank is essentially how corals breathe. It supports their respiration and washes away their organic waste. But you absolutely must avoid the fire hose effect. Corals don't have thick, rigid bark like an oak tree. They have incredibly delicate flesh stretched over sharp, razor-like skeletons. If you point a wavemaker directly at them, that blast of water will literally tear the tissue right off the bone. You want random, turbulent flow. And finally, always acclimate them slowly. Start them lower in the tank and inch them upward over a period of weeks so they don't get sunburned by your lights.
Section 4. Essential feeding and maintenance. Basics for growth.
Notice the distinct difference in biological needs when we talk about coral nutrition. Photosynthetic corals, like our zoas and leathers, rely almost entirely on the light you provide and the overall water quality for their daily nutrients. They're your absolute low-maintenance eaters. Conversely, those supplemental feeding corals have very different anatomy. LPS corals, like your hammers and frog spawn, have actual visible mouths surrounded by tentacles designed to catch passing prey. While they absolutely do photosynthesize, if you take the time to target feed them with specialized meaty coral foods a couple of times a week, they will physically reward you with explosive skeletal growth and incredibly vibrant, dense coloration.
Beyond feeding, the ultimate overarching success factor for a beginner is consistency. You achieve this through regular water changes to constantly replenish trace elements, keeping your temperature rock solid, and monitoring your key chemical parameters like salinity and alkalinity. But here's the most important takeaway for a new aquarist. When you see a parameter slightly off, you must make your adjustments gradually. Imagine a beginner testing their water, seeing the alkalinity is slightly low, panicking, and dumping a massive dose of chemical buffer straight into the tank. That sudden, massive chemical swing will severely shock the system and kill the coral far faster than the slightly low alkalinity ever would have. Stability is everything, and nothing good happens fast in a reef tank.
Section 5. Beginner mistakes to avoid? Guarding your patience.
Consider this your definitive what not to do cautionary survival guide for the first few critical weeks. Step 1. Do not add corals before the tank is truly chemically stable and the nitrogen cycle is completely finished. Just wait. Step 2. Don't just glue everything right in front of your power heads. Remember the fire hose analogy. Step 3, and this is a massive one, don't keep moving them around. Every single time you pick up a coral to rehouse it because you think it might look slightly better 3 inches to the left, you completely reset its acclimation process. It's exactly like uprooting a delicate houseplant every 2 days. It severely exhausts them and ruins their internal stability. And step 4, respect their spreading habits. Remember our Space Invader GSP. Give them the real estate they'll eventually need to grow so they don't outcompete and aggressively sting their more peaceful neighbors.
Starting a reef tank is fundamentally an exercise in patience and marveling at the tiny, intricate details of biology. By choosing the right starter species and focusing entirely on a steady, calm, consistent routine, you're setting up a highly reliable foundation for incredible growth down the line. Start small, let your chosen starter corals truly acclimate before you expand your collection, and I promise your future livestock will absolutely thank you. So I'll leave you with this one vital, lingering question to ponder before you go out to the store and buy your very first coral. Will you prioritize the long-term stability of your ecosystem, or will you rush the reef? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy reefing.